Dr. Saini, Dr. Singh, distinguished guests, colleagues, and very importantly, all the young adults in the audience. A very good evening to all of you. To begin with, I would like to thank the Amity family for inviting me to this August gathering and bestowing this huge honor. I'm truly humbled, especially when I see around me the collective experience and wisdom present in the room, in particular on the dais. Thank you once again. The topic under discussion today, in my mind, epitomizes the opportunities and responsibilities inherent in our roles as educators. It forces us to reflect and to take stock. What are we doing as educators to inspire young people to grow beyond themselves? Speaking of inspiration, I cannot but help talk about the iconic inspirational figure Sachin Tendulkar. Not just because last night he broke yet another record, not because he's the highest scorer in test runs, not because he's the only sportsman to score 200 runs in an ODI, but because of what Sachin is as a person. Humble, full of positive energy, resolve, and, ladies and gentlemen, something that is special and dear, simplicity. A couple of months ago, I was in Birmingham, UK to attend a Heads of School conference. And I was being driven to the airport in a taxi by a Pakistani driver. And in that 45-minute journey, out of that, we talked for about 35 minutes about Sachin. And in the opinion of this Pakistani gentleman, he said, you know, Sachin represents something that is divine. Those were his words. He said he has kept the purity of the game, the spirit of the game. And according to him, he said he's the only gentleman in sports. And I thought to myself, of course, I bloated like a peacock because, of course, Sachin, I thought, was ours. But in one moment, in one brief moment, I understood that people like Sachin belong to humanity. Because in their pursuit of excellence and their respect for what they do, they are able to transcend barriers of hate and resentment, which, with all due respect, politicians and bureaucrats find difficult to do. That, ladies and gentlemen, to me, is the true mark of excellence. And for those of us who have read Aristotle, he says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The corollary to this, of course, is that does inspiration only come from iconic inspirational figures, larger than life figures who we can just look up to but never hope to emulate? For educators, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of my colleagues on the dais, that is certainly not so. For educators, the inspiration comes from the desire to learn. The inspiration comes from the ambition to make a difference. The inspiration comes from delivering one lesson, one educational program that is better than the previous one. The inspiration comes, excuse me, the inspiration comes from the expressions, not just on the faces of a 5-year-old, yeah, if you can get some water. Not just from the face of a 5-year-old, but even a young adult, like so many of you sitting here. You know, when you see that expression, that yes, I've done it, I have reached an individual milestone, that, ladies and gentlemen, is truly inspirational. Thank you. I cannot help but be reminded of a nursery rhyme I grew up with. I'm not that old, by the way, just because I wear glasses. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. I think it is this wonder of learning, this ability to capture curiosity, this ability to nurture creativity, this ability to make young people decision makers, risk takers, is something we as educators need to capture, which, believe me, I think we do, but at times we don't, because we are so convinced that covering the content and getting you ready for life, getting you into a good job, is more important. How are we going to go about doing this? In my mind, the answer lies in a three-pronged approach. Enable students, like many of you sitting there, to discover your innate passion. What is it that you really want to do? Empower you with social skills which allow you to be self-confident, self-aware, adaptable, discerning. In other words, adults who have emotional intelligence. And most critically, from where I'm standing in a secondary school, I think the most important thing we need to do is to give student voice a central place in our vision and in our mission. There is no point in saying that we deliver a student-centered education and be intimidated by student opinion. Let's have the courage to listen to what youngsters have to say. At times, they can actually show us the way. But before we embark on this blue sky visioning, we, all of us, need to be very clear about our own mindsets. Are we sure that we understand the distinction between the pursuit of excellence and the desire to succeed? In my mind, the latter is a byproduct of the former and not an end in itself. In the words of Warren Bennis, excellence is a better teacher than mediocrity. The lessons of the ordinary are everywhere. Let us warn students, all of you, for God's sake, don't get trapped into mediocrity. Chalta hai should not do forever. Moving on to our next challenge as educators. How do we continually engage the 21st century adolescent or young adult to engage with their learning? How do we do it? Because these adolescents, to some of us, are amazing, and to some of us exasperating, because they can multitask in a manner we had never thought imaginable. They can surf the net, listen to music on the iPod, chat on MSN, and believe it or not, do mathematics homework at the same time. And God help you if you walk into the room and say, "What do you think you are doing?" "Mom, chill." I'm sure we all say that. How do we engage these youngsters in their learning? The first thing we need to do is that we need to understand how young people learn. We need to understand what is it that gives them a connection. We need to understand how they will respond to a different situation. In other words, we need to make your college and school experience empowering and inspiring. One in which, and please mind my words, one in which the only thing that stretches you is the power of your own creativity, where you have the freedom to question stereotypes, and where learning is seamless and transferable, and at the same time embedded with what I referred to earlier: integrity, humility, and honesty. A learning experience, the success of which is not just measured by university placements or a 5-figure salary, important though that is, but by the questions you ask yourselves. Am I somebody my friends will remember? Am I somebody team leaders will want on their teams? Am I somebody, when it comes to the crunch, will choose excellence over material success? Very important questions that generation next needs to answer, because in those answers you will be able to define the quality of the legacy you leave behind. Our role here, of course, is to shed the perception that children or youngsters are like blank slates and we can pencil in our ambitions on them. There is nothing further from the truth. You all have minds of your own, You're all individuals in your own right, and you have the right to be educated and not just trained. And now to the penultimate question. Do women educationists have a special role to play in this evolving dynamic? Looking at the luminaries on the dais, barring two, obviously a very big one. And that's not just because women are inherently good at telling people what to do, because they are actually unwittingly the strongest advocates of non-conformity. They have broken the shackles of domesticity and subjugation by being resilient, focused, and determined, and by having the courage to question established stereotypes. Therefore, in my mind, on our mantle, very substantially rests one singular responsibility, and that is of continually encouraging innovation and non-conformist thinking in students, because there is no driving force greater than that of a creative mind wanting to experiment and innovate. Let us not be, as educators, intimidated by students who disbelieve our hypothesis, who question us, who challenge our wisdom, because that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the power of creativity and genesis lies. Finally, in a world, the 21st century world, where paradigms and goalposts are shifting with ever-increasing fluidity and uncertainty, let us move towards nurturing students who are motivated, creative problem solvers, risk takers, capable of critical independent thought, capable of accessing technology but in an ethical manner, at peace with themselves and others, appreciative of diversity, yet when it is important, capable of unified action, keen to be givers and not just takers, and most significantly, those who have the courage and the potential to be the architects of their own destiny. They will because they believe they can. Let us empower our students to have the courage to dream their dreams, the passion to realize them, with the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. And in doing so, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them the ownership of being lifelong learners. In the words of some middle school students who were quoted in a book written by Scott Greenwood, and I'd like to end with that quote, "Trust us, we won't disappoint you. Guide us, but don't infantilize us. Show us, don't only tell. Listen to us." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Thank you.